The prophecies of Christ's purpose in one verse. Could we go to other verses? Of course we could. Of course we could. We could do a grand collection of them. But we're just going to look at one verse for this evening. And that's all we're going to do. Now, we're going to make reference to other verses, obviously concerning fulfillment or meaning or things like that. But we are going to be looking at the purpose of Christ as promised in the Old Testament. So we will go to Daniel chapter 9 and verse 24. This is our verse. This is the 70 weeks prophecy. Well, this is one verse of it, of the 70 weeks prophecy. And the 70 weeks prophecy is an extraordinary prophecy. We're not going to be looking at all of it because we don't need to for our purposes tonight. But we will explain, because we need to explain, the idea of 70 weeks. And we will do that in time. But 70 weeks are determined. So who is speaking? This is Gabriel. Who's he speaking to? He is speaking to Daniel. Daniel has been in prayer. He's been in prayer concerning Israel and concerning the iniquity that Israel had done. He is in prayer to God, and it is at that point when Gabriel is sent with this message, and he's to reveal it to Daniel, and Daniel is to record it. And like I said, this is a very powerful message. And it says, he says this, 70 weeks are determined for your people and for your holy city. All right, he's been praying for Jerusalem as well. That is your holy city. Your people, who is your people? Well, that's the Jewish people. All right, 70 weeks are determined. What does that mean, 70 weeks are determined? Well, in looking through commentaries, I know what it means. But in looking through commentaries, just to see what do others take of this, pretty much everybody agrees. Yeah, that this is not literal weeks of 7 days, but this is that of 70 weeks would be 70 sets of 7 years. So 490 years, not 490 days, it's 490 years when all these things will take place. Now, they're not going to take place at the final 490th year. It's not saying that. It is saying, however, inside these 490 years, these things are going to take place. And then it's going to get very specific concerning which day certain things will occur. But he begins in this general statement of 70 weeks. So literally it is 70 sets of 7. 7 what? 7 days? No, 7 years. 490 years. And in 490 years, these things will occur. So, for your people and for your holy city, we might as well go ahead and underline that. This concerns the Jewish people. This concerns Jerusalem. Because inside the 70 weeks prophecy, we're not going to be discussing it except for right now. It does speak of Jerusalem being rebuilt and the temple being rebuilt. And I guess this is a good time to explain when is this even given? So we're in the book of Daniel. So what point in time are we in the book of Daniel? Well, we're in the 70-year captivity is where it is. Starting with the Babylonians being their captors. The Babylonians are destroyed or overtaken by the Medes and the Persians. Now we're in the days of the Medes and the Persians, and Daniel is still alive. Daniel is still being a prophet. He's still writing, and he is serving with those Medes and Persian kings. So this is that time under the Babylon, what we call the Babylonian captivity, but it's more than just Babylon. under the Babylonian captivity, and then they would return. In the days of Ezra and Nehemiah, they would go back in waves. It's not that now they're permitted to go back and everybody right then and there goes back. They go in waves, and some will never go back. Some will stay precisely where they've been, because that's all they know. They would have been born and raised in a different country, and a place like Jerusalem would be foreign to them. They don't know anything about it other than what they would have read in the Old Testament, what they had been told. That's all they would know. And that's why when we get into the New Testament, we can find someone like Barnabas. Barnabas does not live in Jerusalem. He does not live in Israel. He's from Cyprus. We also have someone like Saul of Tarsus, who's from Tarsus. Now, he's educated in Jerusalem, but he's not from Jerusalem. And we see others also that seem to be spread all over the place. Lydia is one. Timothy, who his mother is Jewish. All right, we see them spread all over the place. And they would be going back. But now let's get back to our subject. Here in the purpose of Christ prophesied in this one verse. All right, now, these next two lines, I put them together because they are speaking of a similar subject, but they're not exactly synonymous, or they're not exactly identical in speaking of the same thing in two different ways. Personally, I think they're speaking from different directions, speaking of things in different directions. But in these two verses, I group them together. Not verses, these two phrases, I group them together. And then the next two phrases I group together. And then the last two, I see them as being kind of separate thoughts. But here it is. What is Christ to do? He is to finish the transgression. And I looked at commentaries on that. The transgression. What? Because that's not a transgression, not to finish transgressions. It is to finish the transgression. And the word there for finish literally means, in the Hebrew, it could mean that to shut away, to imprison, to confine, to restrain. But here we have in the New King James that to finish the transgression, to bring it to its end. And we can look at places such as Psalm 51:9 of hide your face from my sins. Now, to finish this transgression, when did the transgression begin? And I think that the transgression refers to more than just one act. I think it begins in one act, but the transgression is something that continued on. The transgression would begin in the Garden of Eden with Adam and Eve. That would be the beginning of it. And from there, we see time and time again of individuals falling into sin, and individuals sinning, and even individuals that we would see as good examples. Even with them, they had problems. Even with them, Abraham lied. All right, and we see others such as Judah and the things that Judah did. Not in always a good person. Not always a good person. And here, there was an entire world that was destroyed by water. Noah and his family are the only ones saved. And that was mass worldwide transgression that had to be wiped out. It's not wiped clean. That had to be done a different way. But it's wiped out. Of where those that were doing such evil, they're gone. They're gone from this earth. And their works wiped clean. Well, wiped away. Wiped off of this earth. And so to finish the transgression is the very promise that had been made back in Genesis 3:15. And it is God speaking directly to the serpent. That is Satan. speaking directly to the serpent, that there is someone who's going to be born of woman who is going to crush your head. You're going to crush his heel, but he's going to crush your head. And here is, in fact, the prophecy concerning that, to finish the transgression. And with everything that means of Christ now has the power over that last enemy, which is death. He now has that power. Now he hasn't stopped death yet, because this world is still going on. When he returns, the death is done. There will be no more. Well, there's the second death, but that's completely different. That is hell. That's that lake of fire. Now, to finish transgression would go all the way back to the Garden of Eden. Now understand, I need you to understand this, there's the idea of original sin, somehow that we are in original sin. That doctrine means that we inherit the sins of Adam. We do not. We do not inherit the sins of our fathers. If that were the case, every child born would bear more sins than the last one. All right, we are born innocent. We are created good. So that going from Cain was born good. He didn't bear the transgressions of his parents. And Abel was born good. And going on down the line, everyone is. But to finish this transgression does go all the way to the past. Now, we come to this one, to make an end of sins. Now, that speaks of something that's going to be in the future. I think the first one, to finish the transgression, that's looking at the past. And I personally think this one is looking at the future, to make an end of sins. That sin does not have to have a power over us anymore. Does not have to have a power over us. And these two things aren't speaking exactly of the same thing. It is the same act that's doing both of these, but it is to make an end of sins means that the effect of the cross goes all the way to the end of time, to the end of this world when Christ returns. The cross also covers everything from the past, to where someone like Noah can truly be saved. Had to have the cross, just like you and me. And someone like Moses had to have the cross as well. And Abraham before him, and David well after them. All of this is covered by the cross. But when we get to make an end of sins, there is that crushing of Satan's head of sin. Doesn't have to have an effect anymore. We don't have to be slaves of sin. We don't have to be under the debt of sin all our life, and in the hopes of the Messiah coming and taking care of it, because it's already been done. All right, it's been done for us. Now, in the days of Daniel, it was that hope. It was that hope of the Christ coming and taking care of everything. For us, it's already been taken care of. Now, Daniel has to have the same type of faith that we have to have. And it's the faith in the Christ. Because the doctrine of the Christ is taught going all the way back to Moses, and spoken of by those such as Daniel, and of David, and of Joel, and of Isaiah, and of Zechariah, and of others. All of this pointing to one person who is going to take care of this massive problem that does not go away without God's intervention, without the death of the Son of God. It can't go away. It remains. And it is something that nobody can solve except the Christ. Nobody can solve it. Now we go to this, to make reconciliation for iniquity. Now, it's not, this is not saying identically what has just been said. It's not a repeat. It is saying something else. Here you have, all right, let's just put it this way. All right, let's read. To finish the transgression, to make an end of sins. You know how he could have done that? Kill us all. That's done. All right, he finished the transgression. He made an end of sins. That's it. All right, well, we have more of a definition here. We have more of a definition. To make reconciliation for iniquity. Reconciliation tells us how that's being done. Reconciliation is not just total annihilation and that's it. So much for that. It is to bring us back to God. And it's not that we have to die. It's not that we have to be punished or that we have to be destroyed or to be able to stop any of these things. But it's reconciliation for mankind. Reconciliation for iniquity. And that is a broad, just like talking about sins, that's a broad category. That's a broad idea of every sort of iniquity, including those who crucified Him. Can they be forgiven of what they did? Yes. The Romans who nailed Him to the cross, can they be forgiven for doing that? Yeah, they can. For Pilate, yeah, he could be. For Annas, yeah, he could be. For the court, and it was a joke of a hearing. Can they be forgiven as well? Yes. It's for all iniquity, to where you can have someone who is in, just think of the worst sort of person. They can be forgiven the same way that everyone else is forgiven. They don't need to have something extra because they're extra mean or they're extra sinful or they're just the worst sort and they're in a different category. It's universal. Everybody is taken care of by the Christ. And it is to reconcile us to God. Not destroy us, not to forget about us, not to keep us helpless, but in fact to reconcile us. Now, we come to this, to bring in everlasting righteousness. So here there's this reconciliation, that's great, but there's something required out of us as well. So Christ came and died for us. What else did He do? Well, He performed miracles. Okay, what else did He do? He did some teaching. He did quite a bit of teaching. He taught concerning that of righteousness. He taught for exactly what we need. And it is given for the sake of obedience, for the sake of, and here's that word, righteousness. To where we don't have to figure it out on our own. We're not left to our own devices. We're not having to define what is proper behavior, what is righteousness, what is just, what's unjust, what's sin. We don't have to do that. He tells us and defines it by way of various teachings, direct statements, by way of parable, and a very profound way of example. There's no better example. There's no better teacher than Christ. Nobody can teach like Christ did. Nobody can. And by way of His example, He shows what righteousness is, what righteousness looks like, what righteousness does, and He's teaching it for us. So there is from this reconciliation, yes. But there's a now he does that. He does that without our help. But now there's something required out of us. Something, and it is this everlasting righteousness. And now I want us to look at that word everlasting, because it means it doesn't change. It is not subject to opinions. It's not subject to outside authority. It's not subject to a change in culture. It remains the same. It doesn't change by ages. You can think of the end of the Roman Empire as the end of an age, and here comes a different age. Medieval period. And then the medieval period it kind of phases out, and now we're into the Renaissance, and that kind of phases out, and we're into the Industrial Revolution. It doesn't change because it's everlasting. It's everlasting. It doesn't change because it's absolutely solid and works always on the human soul whenever or wherever that human soul happens to be. It works the same, and it's universal. And that makes it extremely easy to obey, extremely easy to understand, and to know that it's universal. And you talk about God is not a respecter of persons. And He's not. He's not. And one would have to make the claim, if this righteousness wasn't exactly everlasting, that it was ever shifting. If it was ever shifting righteousness, one would have to say, one, He's not consistent. Number two, He is the author of confusion. God is the author of confusion. And also, He is a respecter of persons, isn't He? Oh, why would that be? Because this group over here, they got it easier than we do. Well, everybody's under the same law. Everyone's under the same law. And we just step aside for the moment and ask, did this happen? Because we have to ask it. Yeah, prophecy, schmophecy, what does it mean? Let's ask the question, did it occur? And yeah, it did. Every bit of it did occur, including the idea of everlasting righteousness. We are under the law of Christ. In the book of James, God is describing as having no shadow of turning, such as one would have with like a sundial, or one could easily see the shadows shifting as the day progresses. God does not change. And this law is the perfect law of liberty. It does not change. And it doesn't matter who you are, when you are, what position you happen to have in whatever society you happen to be in. It's the same. It's for king, it's for pauper, it's for the aged, it's for the young, it's for everyone. Rich, poor, healthy, infirm, everyone has the same Creator. Everyone has the same Savior. Everyone has everlasting righteousness, that law that is given for all mankind. Now, we come to this, to seal up vision and prophecy. To seal it up. What does that mean? That means that all the prophecy concerning the Christ would come to fulfillment, and it will be sealed. That is, it will be completed. It will be done. That it would be at His birth, prophecy is being fulfilled. As He is maturing, prophecy is being fulfilled, including this particular prophecy. As He's going through His duties in this life and going through His ministry, prophecies are being fulfilled. Every single one of it, every one of them. including what Jesus had to say in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 17. Do not think that I came to destroy the law and the prophets. I didn't come to destroy, but to fulfill. He came to fulfill them, not to destroy them. And of course, this prophecy doesn't say to destroy vision and prophecy or destroy the law and the prophets. It doesn't say that. But it is to fulfill them, to do exactly what was written. On time, 100%. I remember talking to a Jehovah's Witness. It was many years ago. And I happened to have mentioned to him of a particular prophecy that had been made by the leadership of the Jehovah's Witnesses that didn't come to pass. And he admitted it. He actually did admit, yeah, you're right, that didn't come to pass, because I showed him, and he knew it. And he said to me, he said, if I have a friend that's 90% correct, he's still my friend. Okay, sure. If I have a friend that's 90% correct, he can still be my friend. I can have a friend that's 100% incorrect and can still be my friend. But we're not talking about a friend, are we? We're talking about somebody more than a friend. We're talking about God who gives prophecy. God is not 90% correct, and we say, well, good job, 90%, that's an A-, but that's okay. You're good, you're still my friend. That would show 10% failure. God can fail up to 10%? No, He doesn't. He doesn't fail ever. He is successful, He is accurate 100% of the time. Completely. Everything. If He were wrong on one matter, one would have to say, well, what else is He wrong about? And rightfully so. What else is He wrong about? What else did He get wrong? Well, it's all or nothing. And we can look and we can see where God is entirely accurate. And that His Word, we can count on this to where vision and prophecy matter. And they are going to be fulfilled by way of Christ. Psalm 2, fulfilled. Joel 2, also fulfilled. Isaiah 53, also fulfilled. Psalm 69, also fulfilled. And 22, fulfilled. All of those things fulfilled. Zechariah 11, fulfilled. All of these, and just all the messianic prophecies, all of them, going back to Genesis 3:15, all of them fulfilled, and 100%. And here is this and it is good news from Gabriel. It is good news that in this 70-week period, which we discussed is 490 years, and it's going to give a beginning point. The beginning point is not exactly when Gabriel says this, because that would be difficult to pinpoint. But he gives a specific event, and we can know the year of that event. And it is that event of the decree to rebuild the city and to rebuild the temple. That's an official decree by the Medes and the Persians, by a king. We can know the year of that event. And so that's the starting point in all of this. And here is so that Daniel and those reading the book of Daniel could get an inkling that something big is going to happen, and it has to be the Messiah. It has to be. And that all vision and prophecy, well, what's most of vision and prophecy even concerned about? The Christ. The Christ, yeah. And especially when we're talking about vision and prophecy that hadn't been fulfilled in the days of Daniel. Because obviously there were prophecies that had already been fulfilled before Daniel was even born. There's certain prophecies fulfilled. Promises that God gave, and promises done. Promises given. Now, we come to this last one, and to anoint the most holy. So, what or who is that? Well, that is the one. It's not a what, it is a who. The one who will, in fact, finish the transgression, make an end of sins, make reconciliation for iniquity, bring everlasting righteousness, who's going to fulfill every vision and every prophecy concerning Him. That would be the Christ. And to anoint the most holy. What does the word Messiah mean? That's a Hebrew word. What does the word Christ mean? That's a Greek word. Both of them mean the same thing. And it is the anointed. And here, to anoint the most holy could have could mean that of the Messiah now being on the earth, because that would fit inside these 490 years. And it can also mean of such as that of Psalm 110 and verse 1. The Lord, or Jehovah, said to my Lord, sit at my right hand till I make your enemies your footstool. It could also be that of Daniel chapter 7, verses 13 and 14, of where there's one like the Son of Man coming in the clouds to that Ancient of Days. And this is Daniel seeing a vision in heaven, and one like the Son of Man coming up with the clouds, and to him is given a dominion, an everlasting dominion. He is given a kingdom. Now, that too can be part of this, to anoint the most holy, because all of this will occur inside this 490 years. It'll be toward the end of it, this 490 years. And this is the purpose, that is the purpose of Christ in one verse, going all the way from that good news concerning the people and the holy city, Jerusalem, all right, to that of transgression and sin, reconciliation, everlasting righteousness, fulfilling of prophecy, and being king. Now that sums it up pretty good. Now, granted, there are certain things not mentioned in this, such as that of healing the sick, nor does it mention concerning how He was going to do such as a finished transgression or make an end of sin or that reconciliation. It doesn't mention that, but we can certainly go to other verses and find that out. But this sums it up very, very well in one verse. It sums it up quite well. The prophecies of Christ's purpose in one verse. And Gabriel is giving Daniel an extraordinary knowledge. Daniel now has something in writing that down that would have been good news, especially for the day. It would have been good news any day. But inside the 70-year captivity, Babylonian captivity, that would have been good news. Because in that very time period, you have someone like Ezekiel, and that the people see themselves as having no hope, no future. They're nothing but a bunch of dry bones. That's all they see themselves as. It's just a dead end. There's nothing good. There's any promise God may have made is not going to be fulfilled. We don't see it. We are just waiting to be buried. That's all we're doing. A dying nation that can do nothing that was promised. But of course, as in the book of Ezekiel, giving them hope and telling them of a hope, here is more information, that would have been extremely good to hear that. That the end of Israel was not approaching. There was still the Messiah, the promised one, that was going to arrive and do exactly as described. Exactly. Christ died for us. That's the love of God. Mercy is extended to us. That's the love of God. There's mercy and grace, and that of wanting us to be part of the family of God, being fellow brothers and sisters with Christ, being children of God, to where we can call Jehovah Father. Christ is the reason we can do that. Christ is the only reason anyone can do that. And He is our advocate. He is our high priest. He is the one that has authority over all things, and that authority will take Him to be our judge, judging every single one of us. The last prophecy to be fulfilled. The last one. This evening, let's look at our lives. Day by day, we get closer to the end of our life. Day by day, let's make the corrections necessary. If you need to respond to the invitation, we ask that you come as we stand and sing.